Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me.
This is our first podcast for both of us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Indeed, it is my first.
So,
Okay.
my
Oh,
office is
good.
mostly in Scottsdale,
Okay.
and my partner runs the team there. And
Hmm.
he'd been telling me for 2 months, it's no big deal. Nobody's getting sick in Arizona. We're going to get back to work every 2 weeks. It'll be another week. Finally, he says, okay, we're getting back to work at the end of May. The governor is allowing us to go back. He went out and bought all the glass shields. He staggered the workforce. We have 8 or 9 people there. And he said, okay, we're set up. 3 days back, somebody came out with COVID on a different floor. The building sent everybody home and went
Right.
almost back into lockdown. And then the office came back for another day. And then all of a sudden they came out with the rules in Arizona. Everybody had to wear face masks and the count started going up. So I don't see a horizon until the end of 2020 where we're going to be working in an office. But at the same point, there's still a lot of things that we have to deal with under COVID. And since you're the HR excellent, whatever you want to call yourself, you're the guru of HR.
Guru. I was just going to say we prefer
Guru.
guru.
And I know we were talking at a provisors meeting, just kind of like different things to think about if we go back to work, if we don't go back to work. I figured, we should talk about this because what I'm going through with just 10 people,
Right.
I'm sure the lawyers we know and other service providers, different than the restaurants and other types of retail-oriented businesses, they're probably
Right.
facing the same thing where, how do you set up your desk? What kind of posters do you put up? Do you have a different way of running the business now that you're remote? And you're
Right.
probably like just a fountain of stories that you're hearing from people, on top of just all the things that you know legally and logistically and
Right.
formally. So I figured, we could have a really good conversation and talk about things that you think are the hot topics right now as we get ready for July 4th next week.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to take in. And I think, one of the most important parts is just recognize it's a roller coaster right now. I mean, it really is. Every day it's changing, and even the experts are scrambling because new regulations come out. You've got all different entities providing regulations, and each state, county, local municipality is different. So they're not
Right.
all the same. So you mentioned you're in Scottsdale. Most of our clients are in California. And then even within California, you've got different regulations for the city of LA versus Orange County or San Diego. So it really is a nightmare for employers, to try and keep their head around everything that's going on. And nobody's getting it 100% right. So
Right.
that's a certainty.
Right.
For
So,
sure. And I think, when it comes down to the bottom line for business owners is you're really looking at, the bottom line. Can you keep your business going? And, what's the best way to do that? So I always say, don't be penny wise and dollar dumb. We don't want to make knee-jerk reactions that are going to shoot us in the foot later. So I think it's wise to move slowly as opposed to rashly. In these situations, like you described your scenario where you were going to bring some people back to work,
right.
do a staggered rollout, bring a couple, every other day or every 2 days and see how it goes first. Because like you said, the building rolled out, they got sick, now you're shut down for 2 days. That's worse than where you were before. And you got people who are now quarantined for 2 weeks. So
Right.
yeah, there's no penalty for being cautious and moving slow right now.
I agree with you. What would you say let's assume that we're going to be stuck for 6 months working remotely. And hopefully people are going to keep that same excitement that they have for 2 and 3 or 4 Zoom meetings a day,
Yeah.
not having to drive, not having to go to restaurants to network and spend a half-hour driving and an hour eating food they don't want and another half-hour driving. And they get used to this new normal where they're meeting so many more people. I know one company, it's like a multi-billion-dollar company. I know the CEO pretty well. And he said they're closing actually more business now without traveling around the world because people are available. I mean, it's
That's
really
interesting.
easy to get a hold of somebody now. So let's just assume that this new normal is remote. How do you go ahead and advise your clients on ways to keep track of employees that they used to visually see? Now they can't see them.
Right.
And not that we're robots and we're trying to get maximum productivity, but how do you create a culture that people enjoy this remoteness and at the same point keep them responsible to the organization that's paying their bills?
Right, absolutely. And I think it's important, one of the most important things is to remain flexible during these times of tremendous change and uncertainty. So there's not always one size that fits all for all companies and all people.
Right.
So I think it's important to know your people if you can. The introverts are usually really thriving at home right now.
Right.
The extroverts are going stir crazy, you know. So if you can be flexible and in allowing, you know, who's going to come back to work in the office and who's going to stay home, I think that's a great benefit to be able to offer to employees long term. But you also need to put some structure around it. So now's a great time to look at, does your company have a handbook that addresses remote work? If you don't have a remote work policy, you need one like yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even
I'm
if it's
assuming you
a temporary.
provide, and you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely can do that. And even if it's a temporary policy, if you don't know forever, like you can put it into effect, and this is going into effect for a certain period of time, and we're going to, you know, wait this out and see how we feel about it. That's fine. But you do want to have a remote policy in place. And number two, you want to look at people's job descriptions and make sure that you've got clear expectations. So some of the administrative orders have been very job specific, not just industry, but you know, if you have administrative staff that can stay home and they're doing, you know, billing or telephone calls, some locations have restrictions that those people are to stay home to minimize risk.
Right.
You know, other people that may have to be hands-on, like nurses or doctors, they are required to report to work. So really, you know, now's the time to do some basic housekeeping. If you don't have your handbook up to date and you don't have your policies up to date, in California, we have new minimum wage coming down the pipeline July 1st. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of new regulations. I would say before pulling any, you know, rapid change, let's do some housekeeping and make sure we've got our structure in place.
Wow. Is there like a top 3 list of things that seem to come up often with clients dealing with their remote employees?
For sure. Probably the number one that comes up now, which isn't going to be in your handbook, is folks who are afraid to come back to work.
Sure.
They may not be sick or have somebody at home, but the fear factor is huge right now. And, you know, you just never know somebody's walk in life and what may trigger them. So there's some people that are, you know, not even wearing the mask and happy and carefree, and other people who've been holed up and have not left the house, like literally for hundreds of days now.
Sure.
So that's when I say it's not a one size fits all. That's truly the case. And so having empathy as a leader and listening to your people and taking that into consideration, not that that's going to be the end all be all, but you know, if that person is a necessary worker, you want to make sure you've got the safety tools in place. If you don't have the safety tools, forget it. Don't bring your people back until you have those.
Can you compel a person to come in with the safety tools in place legally?
I give that a big if. So if they don't fall into one of those, you know, classes of employees that are required to stay home and your regulations say, you know, you can come back to work. What I like to do is a more interactive process, because sometimes there are things there like an underlying health issue where somebody may have one in the household, or they may have now additional kids or family members at home that they didn't have before.
Right.
So I prefer to stay away from compel and think about let's open some dialogue and hear what's going on.
Right.
You know, but at the end of the day, that's going to go back to your policy, which if, you know, lesson A was we want to have a remote work policy, and now you don't, which, you know, terminates that remote work policy. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But
I gotcha.
You know, ultimately, most of your employees probably are expected to be in work at some point in time.
Right. What do you do about monitoring? Like I forgot the name of a software program, but there's, for example, like key loggers, key log tracking, or video monitoring that obviously it has
Right.
to be a company computer and things like that. What's your feeling about stuff
Sure.
like that?
Well, I mean, for sure, you want to have a payroll system set up and time tracking system. At a bare minimum, if you don't have it set up for them at home, they can be using Excel spreadsheets. And in California, labor code is very strict as far as them taking breaks if they're an hourly employee. So you do want to, at a minimum, be mindful of having those things in place. Additionally, there's different payroll softwares that have add-ons and things where you can be tracking time, you know, and billing, you know, to projects and stuff by the minute or by, you know, smaller increments of time, productivity software for the computers. But what you want to be aware of is not seeming like the watchdog too much. You
Right.
know, the underlying concern there is there's some trust issues. You know, most people, if the culture was one of you had high performance teams, you had trust while you were all together, and now this is pivoted and things are different. You want to get back to restoring that place of trust and good culture with the remote team.
Right.
Um, you know, that being said, there are tools that can help you monitor what's going on. And really, I think it goes back to the expectations and outcomes. You know, what's the company's strategic plan and what's your strategic goals? And do you have performance measures for your people that are tied into those things, you know, so
Wait,
that they know
mhm.
what they're expected to produce, you know?
I remember that when we came up with the idea for the podcast, there was a third person involved, Yoni from Innovative IT Group,
That's
and he
right,
had given
right.
us a piece of software to use. I'm going to have to reach out to him to find out what that
Yeah.
is. Maybe I'll post it in the when we do the podcast, when we produce it. And I think one of the questions would be not more of a legal question, but more of a practical question, which is we see on Zoom often these social events where people are
Mhm.
drinking. I knew one guy I met up in San Francisco, a CFO for hire, Robert, I think his name was, and he told me he's into wine. So he actually had 25 people on a Zoom call, and each person was getting a box of wine in the mail with
Yeah.
tasters, little bottles.
Wow,
Everybody
I
was
want to be
drinking
part of
together,
that social group, huh?
right? So I'm sure the cannabis group is doing their own thing too. Legal in
so,
California, it's all good.
so
Uh,
basically in California, no one's sober when they're working anymore.
that's it. So the question is, what have you heard from the grapevine of things that companies have been doing to create that camaraderie that used to exist around the water cooler or the lunch table or going out to the Fridays for lunch type of thing? What are you
Yeah.
hearing that's fun, that's unexpected, that's working well? One thing I will share is I've heard you have to limit the number of people to those type of
Mhm.
events, because even when we do our meetings on provisors, having 50 people, the meeting's too big, except when they do the small breakout rooms, then it's fantastic because you're with 4 to 6 people and you actually have time in 10 minutes to get to meet people and hear stories. But when they do
Right.
the big social events, when there's more than 25 people, it's too big unless they're doing breakouts. So what do you
Yeah,
hear?
no, the breakout rooms are good for sure. You know, I think when you've got a remote team, as much interactive actions you can create makes the interest level go up for sure. So they have online games and tools and surveys and things, I think, to keep the group engaged. That's way more fun if you're keeping it interactive. I haven't heard of any like wild and crazy games or things going on. I know some people are doing theme, you know, dress in pajama days and, you know, different kind of hokey dokey things, you know,
Right.
if you're into a lot of like sports figures or whatever, you know, the group may be into, that's always, you know, adds a little creative spin on it. I heard about a artist party for a women's group was doing like everybody had to do like painting or something like that. So I think, you know, touching upon creativity is always good if you can make it more fun, you know, or everybody bring a joke or something that adds to it. But you know, recognizing the online meetings just aren't the same as being, you know, sitting next to somebody in person. So keep them shorter, keep it visual for sure. Some people don't do the Zoom, you know, they just do phone calls. That's never as good as requiring the team to be on camera, and make it as interactive and fun as you can. Add some humor to it for sure.
I have to tell you, I'm still stuck on the pajama story that you said, because I'm imagining of 6,000 members of Provisors, there's some percentage that sleep in their birthday suit.
Well,
every other idea you gave, I wasn't listening to, because I was
you got your mind just was stuck in the pajama.
Yeah. Well, you say pajama party, and that's like Greece. It's like everything I imagine. It's a good way to live.
There you go.
I will. One other thing that's come up is people. It's really interesting to go to our meetings and guest in different cities. I've gone to Boston, Chicago, Palo Alto, San Diego, Irvine, Newport. I'm really getting a cross section of attitudes, feelings, anxieties from all around the country, Democrat, Republican, I don't care about politics, and one of the things that I see common is weight gain. A lot of people are complaining about being stuck at home and gaining weight, and I am fortunately not in that world, because I am pacing so much when I'm on a phone call that I work out of we're all out of our house, but I was already out of my house before COVID, and I run outside to my backyard and I walk around in circles. We have like a cement track around the whole backyard. So I'm walking like 14, 16,000 steps a day. So the question is, what advice do you have? Again, because you're hearing all the stories, because you're dealing with employees and employers, and you're the guide. So what advice or stories can you share for people to help them find a routine that doesn't have them running to the kitchen every 2 hours for another scoop of Ben and Jerry's, or
right,
something like that?
Well, instead of running to the kitchen, run around the block, like you said. Get your shout out for the Fitbit or the Apple Watch, one of those things.
I got the cheap
I got mine too.
Yes.
Well, and the amount of steps you can take when you're on lockdown is really quite amazing. I've been over 20,000 almost every day. And,
oh my God. You're not pacing, you're running.
Well, it's like, anxiety goes up, and I have a bigger, circle to pace. So I pace around my neighborhood. We have a little trail. I just keep going. I'm literally like a hamster on a wheel. But
that's a lot.
Maybe you and I are the old
version. How many miles is 20,000 steps?
I don't know. Let's see. So right now
you take little steps. I've seen you walk. It's not the same.
Yeah, I kind of walk like a horse. It's probably at least 10 miles, I'm guessing.
I thought it was 2,000, but I just can't believe I'm walking 6 or 7 miles a day.
Yeah, I'll fact check that and get back to you.
Let's put it this way. I went to the hospital on Friday night, like at 3 a.m. I thought I was having a heart, not attack, but something was wrong. My heart rate was accelerated, and my wife said, look it up on Google. It said left side, it's cardio, something or another. It's a lot of syllables. I said, I'm going to the hospital. So they test me for 11 hours. They give me stress tests, they do blood tests. They talk to me, they examine me. And at 2 o'clock, they say, you can go home. There's nothing wrong with you. And my brother-in-law was visiting one of his patients. And I said, well, it's Shabbat. What do I do? Do I drive home? Because I drove there. Driving there is not a problem. It's life or death, whatever. He's like, no, you have to welcome. And I have to welcome 45 minutes. But before I left, I said to the doctor, I don't exercise. I'm the B test and the A/B test of life. There's the guy who exercises and the guy who doesn't. I want to be the guy that doesn't, as long as I can do it. And so he said to me, I said, can I just continue my diet of pastries and everything will be okay? And he's like, well, your heart's fine. So I'm lucky I'm walking 14,000 steps a day, because I'm sure I'd be on the other side of the equation for gaining weight. And
right.
So
your neuroses is keeping you thin.
Yes, I think that's what it is, the anxiety. Well, like you get on the phone and you just start pacing and walking, and it's really easy. And I don't walk around. Some people do Zoom calls or FaceTime. I don't have an Apple. I'm not an Apple guy. I have Android. I don't even know how you would do FaceTime on an Android, but the walking is good. Spirits are up for most of the people that I'm talking to, interestingly enough. But I worry that we're in a bubble. So, for example, we're in a world where everybody's engaged, everybody's working. Lawyers seem to be kind of screwed in a big way. A lot of their phones are not ringing right now. That much I can tell you.
That's
But
true. That's true.
what are you hearing from clients of yours that are not like service businesses that are kind of insulated from this COVID stuff? Are you hearing anything?
Well, we have several clients that are sort of in the manufacturing, shipping, and distribution, and that industry. Now, the ones who've been able to pivot and capitalize on some new products that are needed right now, I think they're all doing well. They're essential services, so they're still plugging along. I'm not really sure, what their bottom line is looking like. I know we had a few incremental furloughs, so I'm assuming that maybe on the sales side it's reduced a bit, but they're able to hold steady. Then we have our folks in the healthcare and the social service industry. Nonprofits are taking a hit. Some of them, some are able to capitalize on what's going on right now.
Sure.
And the healthcare sector had taken a big hit for the regular primary care and regular medical practice, because everything was suspended for
Sure.
a few months of surgeries, and now they seem to be coming back, and business is flowing again for them. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with. I'm sure the restaurants are getting killed, retail's getting killed,
Sure.
unless they were able to shift to online. But yeah, it kind of just really depends the industry you're in. Of course, whoever makes plexiglass or nasal swabs is
Very happy.
is now retired in Bali. But
yes, I heard of a guy who was a plumber, and he made $140 million in 2 months selling sanitizer and masks and stuff like that.
wow,
He sold
yeah.
his business and moved to Florida. Well, we've been working with Westfield for maybe 10 years, working on a particular division of Westfield Mall, which is now called URW. And my wife went to the mall yesterday, and she said it was packed, which is
Really?
great.
Oh, that's great
So
news.
people are definitely masks and scanners and all that kind of stuff. We have a client, he has a machine called the Digital Gatekeeper. If you check out digitalgatekeeper.io, it's really cool. It has a machine that you can put in front of a doorway. You can put it anywhere you want, but ideally at a doorway, and it will scan the face and take temperature of people. So this is a tool that he's selling to an airline to put in all their terminals now. It's pretty cool that people are coming up with devices that help people get back to work and feel safe when they go out socializing. I read an article this morning about the vandalism from the rioting.
Right.
We work with Jewish Free Loans. So what they're doing is they're giving microloans to stores or businesses that were affected by looting. So there's all this ingenuity. You talk about nonprofits hurting. Right. So they figured out a way not to pivot, but to serve a need. Right. Donors want to help. They don't know how to donate to a specific place. So Jewish Free Loan becomes the intermediary, the funnel through which they can take your money. It's not just Jewish people. It happens to be a community loan lending association. So it's interesting to see how people are responding to this dynamic situation.
Yeah.
And one last thing, I think we're getting to the tail end of this, is have you come up with something from Exalt Resources that would be kind of like a top 10 things you should do that you can give to people that listen to this crazy podcast? Or is there something that you're thinking? It's something like I would recommend doing it if you haven't done it, but just something that you're giving to clients to give them a head start on all of this stuff, because the world is still in shock.
Right.
And every day you wake up not knowing, are we going back to work? Are we staying home? Is there going to be an antidote, a vaccine? Is there going to be antibody? Is there going to be, there's just so much going on. People need to have a sense of direction.
Right. Clear
direction. You can't blame it all on the president. They need stuff that's just, they need people to step up and say, I have confidence and I have a pathway that you can, at least like you said, you can do something temporary.
Right.
You know, so have you got stuff that you can share?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been doing mostly webinars and online things, but I can, just for you, Jason, make a top 10 list of things to check or do.
That's fair.
During this time. So.
Okay. My mom always says, if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. That is true.
Our other thing is water seeks its own level. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But
water seeks its own level.
meaning you hang out with people that you like or that you share common things with.
Right.
The problem is that I think I'm working now with Paul Mitchell, who I met in Provisors. I don't know if you know him. He's a sales executive coach type person. He happens to be Black, older than me. I don't know if the term is African American or Black. I mean, they say Black Lives Matter, so I think I can say Black appropriately. And the problem with water seeks its own level in the context of business and even socially is we don't know if all I'm hanging out with are white people. Right. I'm not sensitive to what's going on in another conversation.
Absolutely.
So part of what I really love about being, and this is not a Provisors podcast, but we're going to definitely submit it there. What I love about being in that community is being exposed to different viewpoints, different thought patterns, different life experiences. Right. And so I'm not that we're so different, but I'm happy that I had a chance to talk to you and meet the guru in person. You know?
I don't know if that qualifies the guru, but
at least tell my partner I worked a half hour today doing something for the business.
There you go. Right? We're gonna time check your computer, Jason.
Yes, exactly, right? We'll have
see what you've been doing today.
Right? Now I'm screwed because I haven't walked for a half hour, so now I gotta go walk for an hour and make it up. And
I'm gonna find you as my Fitbit friend on the internet.
I have 12 cookies waiting for me upstairs from a girl in my synagogue who did a fundraiser, gluten-free. So
there you go. So they don't count in the calories.
Not counting calories. I even sent her more money than she asked. It's all good. Look, have a great weekend. Today's Friday, June 26th.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Venus came out of retrograde yesterday, so today is a new day.
Very good. I'm feeling, my skin feels much better today.
Yep, I'm feeling it.
My hair is another story, but we'll work on this. It's all good. All right. Very good.
Have a good one.
Thank you. All right.